Hi, I'm Don. I'm here today to give you a short video on Mortise Master. It's my creation. I've been working with Mortise Master for about 3 years now. We just started selling them in 2020. This design is version umpteen because I started off with an idea and then it evolved into this, and I think everything's boiled down to the lowest common denominator right now. I've had a lot of different options on it, ended up taking them off. I'm a big believer of simple is better. So what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about the design, a little bit about what Mortise Master can do, how you do it, and also the things it's not designed to do and the things you can't do. I think that's just as important. So Mortise Master is designed to use your common plunge router with a guide bushing that I supply with the unit, and you can either mount the Mortise Master to your workbench, a work surface, or you can actually clamp your work to a workbench or put it in a work vise and then mount Mortise Master to the work. And that's because when I saw all of the homemade jigs for using a plunge router and doing loose tenon joinery, there are all these little jigs that are mounted to a bench, and I thought that's fine, but I want to build a 5-foot long coffee table, and it's got a 5-foot long stretcher. How do I get a 5-foot long stretcher up into that jig and mortise the end of it? Well, you can't. So those jigs that mount to the bench, those are all fine, well, and dandy as long as you got little short pieces of wood. But I think Mortise Master allows you to stand up your stretchers if they're long, clamp them, put your Mortise Master right on the work up here. If you need a little step ladder or step stool, get up here and you can mortise the end of long pieces. So that's a lot of where the design concept came from, being able to do the flexibility of doing end grain and both end grain and whatever you call that, the side grain. Another thing you can do is like we had a tabletop that was 6 foot long, and it was made out of white oak, and the end grain was starting to check, and I wanted to stabilize that. So I wanted to mill a groove into the end of that table all the way down and put a spline in. Well, how are you going to do that? Stand the tabletop up on a router table? I don't think so. I guess you could use an edge guide, but with Mortise Master, doing something like that is very easy. You can either attach Mortise Master to the tabletop, set the stops all the way back, mill a section, move it, mill a section, but I've also kind of kept it loose, plunge down, and then slide the Mortise Master along the work. You have to experiment to see which works best for you, but all these are possibilities with Mortise Master. The basic concept is twofold. Auto center, which means the plate has these bearing guides, and if you put them in the opposing holes and straddle your work, no matter how thick your work is, the mortise ends up in the center of it. Then that's great if you want it in the center, but what if you don't? What if you want to do, let's say this was a leg and this was a stretcher, what if you want it to be flush? How do you do that with Mortise Master? Well, you can, and I'm going to tell you how. Another thing, what if you don't want it flush, but you don't want it in the center? You want a slight reveal. I'll show you how to do that too. It's all very, very easy. So auto center straddles the work, and then if you want to work from the face over, which would be basically, if this goes in Mortise Master like so, you want to work from the face to the center, regardless of how thick it is. Then you'd place the bearing blocks in whatever hole that your setup chart calls for. There's multiple offsets, and you can see no matter how thick your stock is, you're going to maintain that distance from the face over to the center. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about auto center. I designed Mortise Master to use the auto center mode and put the mortise dead center of the work. But what I found was there's play in the plunge mechanism. There's a little bit of play in the guide bushing where it goes into the plate here. It's not much, a couple thousandths, but you have to have a little clearance so you can get it in and out. But all those things add a little bit of play to the system, no matter how perfect this thing is. And when you plunge down and when you move that bit from side to side, the spinning cutter forces everything to one side. A lot like when you're using a router table and you go a certain way so it throws the work up against the fence, same concept. So whatever play you've got in the system, and routers are different, there's manufacturing tolerances, all those things come into play, but when you cut, it's going to push it over. It's going to take all the play out of the system and push it to one side. So I gave up on trying to get it perfect, and I said, what if I get it within a 64th of an inch of center? And then I thought, if it's off a little bit, as long as it's off the same direction, it doesn't matter. Everything's perfectly flush. So in order to do that, you have to make sure the face that you're working from is on the same side of your joint. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's very, very easy. 1/64 of an inch of center. That's 15 thousandths roughly. Now, let me tell you, if this mortise is off center, let's say 10 thousandths, then the distance here the difference between this distance and this distance is going to be double that. Think about it. As the mortise moves center, off center, this side gets thicker and this side gets thinner. So when you measure it with calipers, it's like 25 thousandths different. You think, oh my gosh, this thing's way off. Well, it's doubled, so it's not off that bad. And the good news is, the way I show you how to use this thing, it doesn't matter. If you have a situation where you have to have that mortise dead center, the distance from here to there and here to there the same, relatively, within a couple thousandths, I'm going to show you how to do that with Mortise Master also.